And I remember going into the room where Srila Prabhupada was, and he didn't have a shirt on at the time. He had just taken his bath and was putting on tilak. And when he saw us, he was very, very happy, and I offered my dandavats. And Gargamuni Maharaj introduced me to Srila Prabhupada. He said, oh, he has given up going to medical school to become a devotee. And he found out that we had just come from East Bengal, where a war was going on. And Srila Prabhupada was very, very grateful. He said that, you have risked your life for me and for Lord Chaitanya. And he was so grateful. And he asked me, so you like our books? I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. And he said, which book do you like the best? And I said, the Bhagavad Gita, as it is. And he said, oh, very good. And as time went by, I went out of the room. And Srila Prabhupada said to Gargamuni Maharaj, after meeting me for the first time, he said, I will make that boy a sannyasi. I was 21 years old.
Well, the first time I met him was in his room at a lunch that Srila Prabhupada cooked. Now this time Srila Prabhupada was cooking for all of his new devotee disciples. There were the first 12 initiated disciples minus one. Kirtanananda was not present at this time. But all the rest of them were. My sister Janki was the first female disciple. So Mukunda warned me, when you meet, we call him Swamiji then, when you meet Swamiji, you can say Hare Krishna, fold your hands like this. So I walked into Srila Prabhupada's quarters, and I remember him sitting in a shaft of light underneath a window. And he didn't have a shirt on. He was dishing out prasadam in this corner. So I said, Hare Krishna, Swamiji. And he said, what is your name? I said, Joan. And he said, so you're from your sister's family? When will the other family members come? I said, I'm the only one. No one else is coming. He said, oh. In India, generally there's a big preparation from the bride side of the family. Never mind. We will celebrate. So that day was my first lunch, and that was a very memorable lunch for a number of reasons. I was a macrobiotic aficionado at that time, and Srila Prabhupada's prasadam was all just power-packed with not only taste, but of course, because his hands had touched it, the way that he served the prasad to the devotees was like no meal I'd ever had. There was so much affection that manifested through Srila Prabhupada's distribution. Another side point, each one of the men ate up to 12 chapatis at a sitting. So that means Srila Prabhupada made a minimum of 144 chapatis for base to start, and then went on with whatever else they wanted to eat. So that was the very first time that I met Srila Prabhupada, that lunch.
My first real direct conversation with Prabhupada was when he was staying over on Formosa, because before the big temple on Watsika, he had separate quarters. Subsequently, he had separate quarters where he'd stay. And I got to go over there, and in fact, I remember it was when Neil Armstrong was in the moonshot, and I was there that day at Prabhupada's house. I had the good fortune of having prasadam. If memory serves me, the cook was Kartikeya, and Kartikeya told me he was making the hot chapatis, and he told me how Prabhupada really liked chapatis. Even though he was a small man, he could eat a dozen hot chapatis. And so I finally got to go into Prabhupada's room, and he looked directly at me and said a couple things, and then he said, in your opinion, or by your knowledge, what is God, or who is God? And having been brought up as a Catholic and, you know, greatness, I said, well, the greatest person. And he said, simply God, Krishna, is the person who there's no one equal to him or no one greater than him. And if you went everywhere throughout the universes, that would be your experience. So I left there with that understanding. I said, well, today I found out who really is God. It's the person who no one is greater than or no one is equal to. That was my first conversation with the Prabhupada.
So I went in there, and Prabhupada was sitting behind, you know, and he always had these coffee table type desks, and sitting there with one leg up, looked real serene, you know. And so I was real nervous, my hand was shaking, and I gave him the rose and laid down on the floor like the other devotees were doing, and I did my prayers in English, and I couldn't help myself from shaking from being in his presence. And then when we all sat up, there was like 12 new devotees, and Prabhupada said, so you're all very fortunate to come to Lord Chaitanya's movement, and now that you are fortunate, you should make others fortunate. Preach this message to Lord Chaitanya's all over the world. And he went on speaking for like 20 minutes, and he also said that if we served Vishnu, John, and Tamal nicely, that he would be happy. And so that's the first time I saw Prabhupada. And
for Mahaprabhu's appearance day, I wrote one poem on surrender to Lord Chaitanya. And I gave it to his servant to put on Srila Prabhupada's desk for Mahaprabhu's appearance day. But I didn't sign it. And Srila Prabhupada, I guess, had read it and liked it very, very much. And by process of elimination, he was asking everyone who had written this poem. And by process of elimination, it arrived to me. So he asked me, he called me into the room, and I was sitting with him there alone. And he was very, very sweet and very kind. And he said, so you have written a poem? And I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. And he said, oh, that's very good. To be poetic is one of the qualities of a Vaishnava. And he said, get a piece of paper and a pencil. And he had written to me a poem. Actually, it was prose, which he entitled 6 Verses on Surrender. And I wrote them down, one after another. And they were very much along the line of Rupa Goswami's teachings. And I still have them, which I have on our altar at home. And during that meeting with Srila Prabhupada, I had the opportunity to speak with him personally and alone. And I could reveal some of the things that were on my mind and in my heart. And I said to Srila Prabhupada, as I had mentioned earlier, that Krishna had revealed himself to me. And that's why I've come to you. And he said, now you must tell them that God is not dead. And then I said to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, you're the only person I trust in this world. And Srila Prabhupada looked up at me very kindly and he said, don't trust me. I will let you down. Trust Krishna. He will never let you down.
Well, actually, in those days, we were so inefficient at everything that we did, and so incapable of knowing the significance of what initiation meant. And I remember that, of course, at our fire yagya for the marriage, we didn't have enough money to buy butter, so we used margarine. And when Srila Prabhupada tried to start the fire, he picked up a piece of wood and he dipped it in. Beautiful. Prabhupada's hands were magnificent, long fingers. Like this, he picked it up and held it over the flame, and it went He did it again. Over the fire, no action. So he looked up very grave and said, oh, this marriage will have a very slow start. I was mortified at that. I thought, uh-oh, what have I gotten into now? But yeah, very significant. I suppose at initiation, I do remember very clearly that Srila Prabhupada first gave me the name Kalindi, which is another name of Jamuna. And very quickly, within 10-12 seconds, he said, no, it is Jamuna Devi. And I said, what does that mean, Swamiji? And he said, the river that Krishna sports in Vrindavan is Jamuna.